In this session, I'm going to take a look at a technique for helping us to simplify how you use the handheld mic. So quite often in a service, you'll find that it's used by the person leading the service, and then it may be used for a reading, and then occasionally it's used by somebody else as well. So you can do all that as you go, that's fine, but if you know in advance that it's going to be used by at least a couple of people, and you can work that out before the service starts, then this is a way that you could potentially make your life a little bit easier as the service progresses. So I'll first of all show you a way I've set it up and how that works in practice, and then I'll take you through how I got to that point and how you can set it up for yourselves. So first off, you'll notice that on the desk, rather than the usual handheld 1 and 2 on this far right panel here, I've actually got just handheld 1 here, and handheld 2 is now here and split into 3. So rather than 1 channel for handheld 2, I've now got 3. So I've got H2 lead, H2 int, and H2 read, and that's basically because I said for what I'm using now, I know I've got somebody who's leading the meeting using it. They're going to use it for an interview, and then it's going to be used for a reading, and I know that in advance because I was given the order of service and I was able to set it up beforehand. So what I've got now is I've got 3 faders set up for the same microphone. That means I can have 3 different sets of EQ, compression, gates, and I can adjust it in advance or have it read it from a library setting if I've already got it preset for that person. And then when it actually comes to using it in the service, all I've got to do is pick which one I want to use. So while the person leading the service is using it, I have the lead unmuted and the channel fader up. When it comes to somebody then doing a reading, say, I make sure the fader's up and I can switch them over. I could fade up and down as well, so I could instead have that one down and then fade up and one down at the same time. I can mute that one if I need to, but it means now that I can quite quickly and easily switch between different people using it. So if I had all 3 set up high, then I could just do this and I could toggle between them as the microphone gets changed. The leader's using it, and then they put it in the lectern and the reading starts, and that sets up differently. So let's have a quick look at all those. So if you look at the processing on those, you'll see that I've got 3, and you can see on the desk there you've got a level coming against all 3 the same. That's because all 3 are assigned to the same input channel. So at the top there it says local 22 on all of them. That's because they're all coming in from the same handheld mic. The only thing you can't change is the preamp gain. That's set to 35. So if I adjust it on one, it adjusts it on all of them. So there's nothing you can do about that. That's fixed. So if I do that now, you can see that's gone down and then back up again to where it was. I can't change that, unfortunately. That's fixed, but I can change other settings. So if I look at the lead, so on the lead one, I've set it so that it's deliberately cutting out all the high frequencies. Switch over to the interview one. Then I've cut out all the low frequencies and boosted the high just to give it a bit of contrast. And if I switch over to the reading one, it's a bit flatter and it's probably a bit louder, because what I have done on this is if I go to the preamp section, although I can't change the gain, what I can change is this thing here called trim. And that's basically a digital gain which gives me a little bit of adjustment, so I can boost or cut it a little bit compared to the others as at the input level. So if you look at the meter here on this one and compare it to this one, then the level is a bit different. Not a lot, but just a little bit different. So that gives me a little bit of control. But basically, the main reason for doing it is I can set up my EQ, my compression, my gates, everything that I need on each of those channels individually, and then I can just toggle between them using the mutes or the faders when it comes to the service. So that's quite nice for me. Obviously, it doesn't mean that other things can't happen during the service where somebody else comes along and uses it, in which case you might just have to do on the fly adjustment, but then there's nothing we can do about that. But this might help you in the majority of cases. So I've shown you how to use them. Now I'll show you how I set that up in the first place. So I've gone back to the desk being in a normal Sunday morning setup sort of configuration, and I'll take you through quickly the steps that I did to set up the 3 channels. So I've got my handheld 2 back where it was where you probably normally got it on a Sunday morning. And what I'm going to do is now go through and assign 3 channels to that instead of the 1. So the first thing I have to do is make sure that I've got 3 channels available to do that on. So we know by looking at the desk that that's local socket 22. So that's what the handheld is plugged into. So I go to the I/O screen and I look down, inputs, local, and what I need to do is find the handheld 2. So that's here. So there's the handheld 2, and that's connected to socket 22. Great, that's what I'd expect. And what I need to do is find 2 free channels. Now, I'd already done this because I've set this up before, and the desk has remembered that regardless of scenes. So what I've actually got is I picked previously channels 35 and 36. They were spare, we don't use that many. So I've patched them on here. So they are now mapped to socket 22. So that's good. So then I want to see those on the surface of the desk. So I'm going to setup, go to surface, and then I'm going to go across and find my handheld. So I'm going to move them over to this section as I did before. So handheld 2 is my first one. So I'll move that across. And then I'll find channels 35 and 36. Here they are. So I drag those down onto there, like so. That gives me those. So that's given me my original handheld 2 and the 2 spare ones. So if I now go to processing and look at those, you can see handheld 2 is on local 22, and so are these 2, because that's how I'd mapped them in the I/O section. But at the moment there's no settings on those, but they are all getting a signal. So if I put the gain back about where it is about right for this mic that I'm using. So what I can then do is I can then use the library to quickly load in the settings for those. So for instance, I might go to here and say, right, we'll use that one for that one. Pick number 35. Go in and pick somebody different for that. I've told it to recall everything, so it'll recall the name and the color. It'll change the preamp setting, but I can fix that afterwards. So I can recall that. Go to the third one, go to the library, and say that's going to be the reading. So I'll recall that for that. There we go. So now I've got my 3 set with the 3 different settings mapped to the same channel. So if I put the gain back to where it's going to work, then you should see that all 3 of them are now getting a signal, and all 3 are there for me to use. And I can, as I did before, I can flick between the 3 and use all 3. So that's quite quick and easy. I can then save that with the scene, and that will remember that next time. If I then the next Sunday don't have as many, I can take one off if I want to. I can swap use the library to preload a different person, or I can just manually set that up as I go. But that's given me quite a quick way to get all 3 of those set up for me, which means when I actually comes to being in the service, it's a bit quicker to be ready for it. Well, hopefully that gives you an idea about how to do that, and maybe you want to give it a try.